So, out of Miami, a rapper whom I've never heard of, but I'm sure younger people have heard of him. Rapper Wavy Navy Pooh, he dies after a reported drive-by shooting. And I know you're going to say, well, what does this got to do with anything? And I usually don't do these type of things, but the reason why I felt that I was going to do this right here is an article out of the entertainment section by Jessica Wang. So she's the writer of this article. So I don't know, maybe there's more that needs to be updated, but this is a young guy. He's only 28 years old. So I'm noticing the reason why I'm doing this is I noticed there's been a lot of rappers or would-be rappers. Some of them haven't even really gotten their careers in music off to a start to be, well known by many. They end up dying really young. They don't live past 30. And I've been noticing it's been happening a lot more often and then back in I guess you would say back in the days, you would hear of incidences, but they would be far apart and they wouldn't be so close together. But now it seems like lately these incidences have been really close together. But I will say this before I get into the article that a lot of times what I've noticed is, social media is a really strong tool for communication and also for people to locate people. And I've seen a number of incidences where rappers will sometimes they'll not be really thinking about the fact that they're posting their neighborhood or they're posting their house with the address in the background. A lot of times you'll find that they'll also say what affiliation of whom they hang around that they're involved with. And a lot of times they go back to those neighborhoods after they've done all this work to try to get out of a situation that it wasn't favorable. They end up going and hanging out with the same individuals. And I guess somehow they feel as though now that they've come into some money or maybe some notoriety that nothing will harm them. But it turns out to be their demise and their end. Because now they're known a little more and they're more targeted. And so that's what I've noticed. And a lot of times people are not really careful about what they post online. And a lot of this younger group of people, sometimes you'll see them, they'll have pictures of themselves. And in the background, people are looking at those pictures. They know the neighborhood. They look at the street signs. They know about where you're at. Sometimes they don't even have to see a street sign. They can figure out. They've been pretty keen to figuring out, oh, I know where he or she is at. And then they just go for them. They know around the same area. Sometimes people will say where they're going to go next because there's this culture that we want to look like we have a lot of money. And we want to show you all of the things that we bought with our money. They'll post, pictures of money, their clothes, maybe alcohol, parties they're going to go to, and they'll flash the address, or they'll email, or maybe not even email. Sometimes they will post a flyer, and those people who are your enemies, they are waiting for you to do that so that you can be the next one, like this one right here. So his name is Wavy Navy Pooh. He died and it was a drive-by shooting. And so Jessica Wang is the writer of the article. So he was best known for a song out in Miami called Murder is a Major Issue. So he died at his native Miami area on Friday. So this was fairly recent. So his record label was Quality Control Music, and it was confirmed on social media. So he was only 28, so he almost made it to 30, but not quite. So the rapper, his real name was Shandler Beaubien. So I may not have pronounced the last name correct, but he was gunned down while he was behind the wheel of his Toyota Camry. This was around 5:30 p.m. and it was local time Friday, according to the reports that they have here. So Miami Herald, CBS Miami, and other local news outlets had reported it. So it is worth noting that with great sadness and a heavy heart that we announced the loss of one of our beloved artists. The Wavy Navy Pooh is his stage name or his artist name. Quality Control Music shared this on a Saturday. So some people already probably are getting word of this and others are just getting word of it. And so our thoughts and prayers are out to the family at that time and this time. So there were two children, one age 1 and age 5, and a woman who were in the back seat of the vehicle, but they weren't hurt. And so EW, I guess it's entertainment, the channel, so has they reached out to Miami-Dade Police Department, and so that's one of their main police departments. So Alvaro Zabaleta, a public information officer out of Miami-Dade PD, he told the outlets that an unidentified driver, he was in a Lexus and he pulled up near Beaubien's vehicle. So he pulled up alongside of him while at an intersection near a zoo, the Zoo Miami is what it's called. It's a site where they do COVID-19 testing. And so shots fired out, and the driver, they quickly fled the scene. So anybody knows who this young man was, this is the one who was murdered on Friday. And I guess he was best known for a song that most of the people that are familiar with, that listen to the music, murder is a major issue. And isn't that ironic? And that's why he was killed. He was killed for the very reason the song that he made was called Murder is a Major Issue, and it's an abbreviation of Miami. And, I'll add a little bit in there. I saw a docudrama of Miami-Dade County and some of the things that have happened. And Miami has had a notorious history of the drug culture and gangs, and there's certain areas that are like extremely dangerous. And so it had changed drastically over many years. And, there had been a culture of a lot of killing and death and drugs actually built some of the infrastructure you see in Miami, which is an unfortunate. And so when you have a culture that have seen that, and that's the way to make money and get ahead, I mean, this is what it brings, and it continues on to bring a lot of death thereafter. And especially if you have people who, if that's what they've been used to listening to or seeing, and that's the way to live or survive. But that's sort of getting like that everywhere now that we're in the era of the pandemic of COVID. You notice there's this struggle that, and I'm going to say this, the middle class has dwindled greatly. And there's the haves and the have-nots, and usually people want to be the haves. And sometimes that may call for some people to feel as though they have to do drastic things or take drastic measures to get to that place. But unfortunately, some people will make it up to a certain point and they don't last. And it's vices, it's, maybe they get into fame and entertainment, such as this young man, and then a lot of times you're a walking target. There is no place that you can go back to your old neighborhood and be safe without being gunned down. Because even without all of that, you'll have people who want to be you. They want to be in your place because of the struggle of not having anything. And so that's what happened. So it says so far no arrest had been made. Miami-Dade Crime Stoppers are seeking tips and information about this particular shooting, and they have a number posted here. You can look at it. If you see the title of the article, you can pull it up. So according to Miami Herald, Beaubien, or B, I don't know if I said it correctly, so I'm sorry for the mispronunciation of the name. He had been previously shot before. So the rapper was wounded in the thigh and the leg after someone in a passing vehicle, once again, or this happened before, had opened fire at him. And other men had gathered inside of a house. This was May of 2020. So he was a targeted young man, I believe. And he's not the only one that is targeted. And if you listen to the lyrics of the music, and I know some people will say, well, no, blah, 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 blah. But yes, we need to talk about what's happening, because a lot of times people will be a part of affiliations of groups. And some of them will be cliques, they'll be like crews, or they'll be gangs, or they'll be whatever. And if you post that, or if it's put in your song, you're a walking target. And when you go back to the neighborhoods, those other rival groups, and I'll say it that way, are waiting to take your place or take you out. And so that's what winds up happening. And it has happened a lot more often, I've noticed, and more regular. And a lot of it is happening to people of color. And they're young. They're dying younger. They're not making it to age 30 or age 40. You're noticing a lot of these young up-and-coming artists are dying of either drug overdose, or they're dying of violence, gun violence, and drive-by shootings. And that's what's been happening a lot more often. And a lot of times all it takes is for them to post things on social media, or they're singing things, or they're rapping things in lyrics, song lyrics, and it rubs somebody the wrong way. You don't have to do too much, and then you're out of here. And so there's a culture of violence that seems to be, unfortunately, the norm. And there has to be some kind of end to this, but it just seems like it isn't. And with what's going on, it has kind of heightened. And I guess this is young people who are coming from people who are people who had went through maybe the crack era. They had parents that were locked away in prison, or people who had battled with drugs and never had any help. And now you see these people who have problems with opioids, they're getting all this support, as to people who during the crack era, they were jailed, they were incarcerated, they were murdered, or they just totally lost everything, and their kids ended up in the foster system, or they ended up with relatives. And so, or those kids end up growing up raising themselves, or the streets raise them. And then they end up involved in issues such as this. And so that is not just happening in Miami-Dade County. It is happening everywhere in all of the neighborhoods that you see that have these similar issues. I will say that. And it is sad, because the more you kill one another is the more that it heightens the fear, it heightens the uncertainty, and you'll have more children that grow up without a mother or father, and there's more of that going on. A lot of this isn't because of breakups of relationships, as some people on social media will get on there and they'll blame one group of people, or they'll say, oh, it's the woman's fault. A lot of times It'll be social issues such as this. People being a part of crews, they're a part of gangs, they're a part of a culture that is violent, and a lot of it comes from anger and fear. And with what's going on right now, it's not getting any better. And now you're going to have a group of illiteracy because of the COVID, because of schools having lack of teachers. They don't respect the teachers. They're not paying the teachers anything. The teachers have to get their own supplies, and now the teachers have to battle sickness and probably death. They're worried about bringing that home to their families. The other thing is you have children who they can't go to school safely because they could get sick. And so now you're going to have more homeschooling, which means that it's going to be more fear, more separation, and more divisions that it creates. And so we have a group of people who are in these neighborhoods who felt forgotten about or lost. And they created their own culture, and the culture is extremely violent. And the way to get ahead is to be a part of, look for that that toxic male figure of we got to get this or nothing. So if you got to do what you got to do to hurt people, lie, cheat, steal, gun people down, then that's the attitude. And so a lot of that has been happening. It's not happening just in Miami-Dade County. It's happening everywhere, I believe. And it's an attitude of survival mode. And that's what happens when there's high crime, poverty is the cause. And having a government that totally distance themselves and they're far removed from the people's cries. And so you have the younger generation that turn out like this. And they don't have any empathy for one another. It's not about building communities, it's about tearing each other down. And one wants to be on top of the other, but in doing so, they're killing somebody that looks like them or somebody from their own culture. And they don't see it that way. They see it as you're the enemy. And I gotta get mine, I gotta get my paper, I gotta get my cheddar, and all this. And so it's bad. And so this is what we have. And so we're never going to get ahead. We're never going to succeed. We're never going to progress in life. We're never going to make anything of our people if we keep gunning each other down. What we're going to do is create that more violent culture and more fear, and then eventually it implodes. And so that's what happens. And then you see more of these killings. And it's usually happening in neighborhoods that are low income or have a high poverty rate. They have a lot of skepticism in this virus. We've created wedges between one another. And then you have a culture, which I was looking at this morning. So I'm adding to this, and I know this article was relatively short, but you also have this culture of willful ignorance. And when I was looking at this morning, there's this divide, this division of we will not comply is what I was looking at. And it's sad, but it's true. It's like you have a virus out there, and viruses, there's no cure for a virus, just medicine to control it. And if you have certain people who have different ideas, or groups of people who have different opinions, that's going to be the case, then that virus, it begins to mutate. And what ends up happening is you have other viruses, and other viruses might not be as mild as Omicron. And that's what ends up happening. That's why when you go and get medication, like when you get antibiotics, the physician will tell you to take all the antibiotics, because if you just take it till you feel better, but you haven't completed it, then those antibiotics begin to get resistant and they no longer work. And we have come to a place in that time where it's starting to get like that, or it is getting like that, where you'll have some antibiotics that don't work as good as they used to anymore because they become resistant to these diseases because people don't finish all their medicine, or they don't believe in the fact that they've actually gotten well, or if they've gotten well, they don't feel like they need to take any more of the medicine. I feel okay. It's the same attitude with the virus. I don't feel sick. So even though they may be infected, so they don't feel that they need to take anything. And then it isn't any better when you have organized groups that are higher up that say, oh, Omicron is less severe, less people are dying, there are less people going to the hospital. So when you have people saying that on, national media outlets, then people don't feel like they have to worry about getting a shot. And if they already have skepticism about it, that just feeds that monster. And so you have this group, these young people see what's going on. They're going through this. They're not wearing masks. They've made their ideas relevant. Violence is the key. They lift up, people like El Chapo. They lift up people like Scarface, because the way to get ahead is to violently take and snatch and grab. We've been seeing those. To take what you need, take what you want. The way to get popular is to do all of the things, make all the mistakes that other people have made in the past. And somehow they feel like they can get out unscathed and they'll be better at it. But that's proven to be wrong, hasn't it? We've seen more rapper killings in this year, last year, than I think most years. It's been a lot close together. And if it isn't killings, it's been drug overdoses and things like that. And so the younger generation is actually killing themselves with this culture of we don't care, however we get there is however we get there. And if you want to get there, you got to be here to get there. And a lot of them aren't here long enough to get where they want to go. I'm noticing that. And so it's gotten more violent. Just out here in Los Angeles, there was a shooting over at on Avalon and Century, where this wasn't a rapper, but this was a guy who was working double shift. His son saw him get killed at a Taco Bell over a fake $20 bill. He couldn't accept the money. And most of those workers are essential workers. We have people that they're working like these jobs double time trying to make their rent. And so everybody's going through something. Some people have different ways of trying to approach how to survive. And, everybody is not going to be a basketball star or a newscaster, or everybody's not going to be, famous or a rapper. However, you have a lot of people trying to do certain things, and in the process, they don't make it. And so, we had the one guy, Pop Smoke, where they say he had posted on social media where he was going to be at a gathering, and somebody saw that and they came for him. And so a lot of these killings have been happening regular. And I'm going to let this go, but I don't see this slowing down anytime soon. In fact, it's gotten worse. It's already there. In terms of it's getting worse, it has gotten worse. So I would say to you young people, don't post your addresses. Don't post where you're going to be at. If you don't know who these people all are, and oftentimes when there's a party, it's by word of mouth, you got to be careful, because if you are trying to get yourself on track and you are trying to make a name for yourself, if you want to be here, don't post your address. Don't post your street. I mean, if you say that in your music, that's one thing. But if you post it and you say, I'm going to be here at blah, 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 such and such at 9 o'clock, then you don't know who else is going to come out there. And that person, it may not be your fan, it may be your foe or somebody that wants to take you out of here. And that's what's been happening lately. And so I would suggest you maybe have bodyguards, but not even that is always helpful. Because if they want to get you, they're going to find a way to get you. And a lot of times these people, it's people they know. They've already had a run-in with them. They're in their circle, and somehow they know how to get close to them. So sometimes some of these things are unavoidable, but when you put these things in your music lyrics, when you put these things on your social media, especially, I think that's more important because it's one thing to put things in your music because nobody can they can be mad at you, but they can't come for you because of what you put in your music unless you post where you're going to perform, where you're going to be, which some of that is unavoidable, right? Because you're going to perform in places, public places. And so if somebody wants to get at you, you gotta always be conscious of that you have a target on your back, especially it depends on what you're saying in the music and how you're presenting it. And so I feel like a lot of these shootings have been happening so close together. I've noticed that. Have you noticed that? Well, with that being said, I'm gonna let this go. This is supposed to be MLK Day, but here we have another death, and I would say that more of this is going to happen because even with me saying this in this article, some people are going to say, yeah, that makes sense. People should not post where they're going to be, but some of it is unavoidable. Like if you're going to be at a public function, but you would think they would have a lot more security, but sometimes even with security, they can't shield you from everything unless you're walking around with like body armor. But I guess this is the culture that has come out of all of this, all of the pain, all of the struggling, all of the suffering that people have had happen to them before. And so, well, another loss, and it won't be the last, unfortunately.